Come, you accidental pilgrims, you who find yourself on a journey of surprise and wonder. Come, you who emerge into this place as an act of liberation. Come, you who seek a life of mindfulness, a place to test your thoughts. Come, you who bring hearts of all kinds, hearts broken open in revelation, hearts full of love to share. Come, you who seek courage, and you who have more courage than you realize. Come, you who stand behind a curtain, gathering up your resources to claim your own truth. Come, you who have been in a bubble, you who are poised for transformation. We begin our story again, gathering courage, love, mindfulness, and a sense of purpose. We gather as a people of all ages, different abilities, different backgrounds, and different perspectives. We share a covenant, a direction for our shared journey, and a commitment to encourage and challenge one another for spiritual growth. This path will ask much of us. Let us move forward in love. Let us move forward in appreciation for one another. Let us move forward knowing we are not alone. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your gifts, you are welcome to join in this journey.
In religious community, we share our joys, our triumphs, our sorrows, and our broken places. In this circle of care, we make space for the complexity of life, the myriad experiences that both bless and break our hearts. The truth of human experience dictates that on any given day, we each come to the table with hearts in different places. If your heart is in a place where you wish to light a candle, to bless, to ponder, to lament, or for any other private reason, I invite you to come to the table and light a candle while we listen to Dan play the prelude, and imagine perhaps going where the music might take you. you are invited to stand in body or spirit as we honor our long-standing UU tradition of illuminating our being together by lighting our chalice and then joining together in our spoken affirmation. In betwixt and in between, we move in the liminal spaces that show shades of what can become, what can be. We light this chalice as a symbol of courage to move into that time of this and that, and not this and not that, with patience and faith and love and hope that this time will pass, like the sun that moves in between rising and setting, reminding us that beauty resounds in betwixt and in between. For the last 76 Sundays, we were individually invited to say the affirmation of our faith while seeing the words on laptops, phones, TVs, tablets, and hearing someone read words that magically appeared on our screens. Somehow, it seems less significant saying it alone. Join me in saying our spoken affirmation out loud, in community together. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. Thank you, and you may be seated.
To sing every song it hears. My heart wants to beat like the wings of the birds that rise from the lake to the trees. My heart wants to sigh like a chime that flies from a church on a breeze. Trips and falls over stones on its way to sing through the night like a lark who is learning to play. I go to the hills when my heart is lonely. I know I will hear
is a special occasion for me. Thank you for letting me do this on your time. I have heard so much about you from Marilyn, and I understand that this is a new beginning Sunday, the first time you've been back since the scourge of COVID. And so I appreciate that I'm here today because, we have gone through a doorway and we're passing through to a new way of life after COVID, after an eternity of quarantine and whatever. And some of the people who, shall we say, suffered, for lack of a better word, through this were students. And this is my student right here. And I have nothing to do with her singing voice. I would like to take credit for it, but no. But if she can write a sentence, I can take some credit. And so I first knew Ellie as a 7th grader. A bouncy, lively, typical 7th grader. You know how that is. And I watched her for 6 years become this beautiful, oh, don't start crying. Now, I'm over it. So we started a journey 6 years ago. I came back to my hometown of Colbert and started teaching in the classroom where 7th graders, in the classroom where I was a 7th grader. And my first job was teaching 7th graders in that room. And I did my student teaching there, the whole 9 yards, came back, taught there 7th graders. So full circle, a few years later, more like 50, came back and Ellie's class, the graduating class of 2021. So it was a special time. She graduated and I retired this year. So we've had a journey together, and I have appreciated Ellie and her wonderful parents, because she wouldn't be the young lady she is without them. It was kind of one of these things. She said, "Oh, I'm going to a concert this weekend." Really? Oh, who's going? My mom and dad and I. And I thought, well, I've never heard that before, but that is great. And so I've been on a journey with them, my own self, and all I was doing, and Ellie. And so I'm giving Ellie a scholarship. She's going to go to Southeastern. She's going to become an English teacher. My goodness. And she doesn't know what she's getting into. And she does not know. But it will be rewarding, and maybe through this little boost that I'm going to give her, she will have the same experiences that I did with another student that I love. And she will love to, and I'm not going to cry. So anyway, I am giving her a scholarship, and it's going to help her, and it's kind of for y'all too. Congratulations. Okay, give me my bit off. Spend it wisely. It is.
our opening thought this morning comes from Frederick Douglass and his speech titled, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July?" Not all of his words from the 19th century are inclusive in terms of language, but I will be reading the original from the speech. What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. You profess to believe that of one blood God made all nations of men to dwell on the face of all the earth, and hath commanded all men everywhere to love one another. Yet you notoriously hate and glory in your hatred all men whose skins are not colored like your own. Our first reading comes from the I Have a Dream speech from 1963 by Martin Luther King Jr. The same note in relation to the inclusive language. In a sense, we have come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our great republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed to the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given its colored people a bad check, a check that has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we have come to cash this check, a check that will give us, upon demand, the riches of freedom and the security of justice. Let us join together in a spirit of meditation for our practices. Is it enough money and a healthy body? Is it freedom of speech or democracy? Seeing people who have these, do they really feel free? To be able to love unconditionally, to be able to smile, whatever the challenge may be, to be able to feel at home with whoever you see. That, I think, is what true freedom really could be. And it's this that meditation can give you and me. True freedom is just a happening, wherein present moment is accepted and you see yourself witnessing without any resistance and letting go. All you do is sit with your eyes closed, meditate, oh my dear one, to experience the joy of going deep within. next reading this morning comes from the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Articles 1 and 2. I'll be reading the original words. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Article 2, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without any distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent, trust, non-self-governing, or under any other limitation of sovereignty.
I do want to apologize to those of you who have gotten a bulletin that says I will be singing a John Legend song. John Legend does not do very simple things. And as much as I love the song and as beautiful as the words and the lyrics and the music are, it's really difficult. And after several times rehearsing, we decided this isn't going to work. So I went into my little grab bag of wonderful music, and I said, hey, Dan, how about this? And it's a song by a couple of friends of mine from the Dallas area, Lainey Bernstein and Michael Gott. And they created this song for the opening of their new space back in 2005. And I thought, this is awfully appropriate for us coming back today. And so this beautiful song is what we are doing today, because we are coming together again. Come together, heart and soul, as we love together. Young and old, we will sing together, together in one song. Come together, from different worlds we are drawn together. In our own way we can pray together. Together we are strong. I see God in you. You see God in me. One path, one vision, one family. Come together, dreams and hands we will join together to build a place we can grow together. Together we are whole. together in our own way. We can pray together. Together we are strong. I see God in you. You see God in me. One path, one vision, one family. Come together, dreams and hands, we will join together to build a place we can grow together. Together we are home.
Thank you so much. Well, I have to say that being here to speak in this format is something I enjoy much more than recording a sermon or a discourse on Zoom. I don't know how your Zoom setup is at your home or office, but when I record sermons or discourses on Zoom, I'm looking at my computer and I'm speaking to myself who's on the screen right there. And, you know, something about speaking to my own face just doesn't seem quite right. So I'm very happy to be speaking today, looking at your faces rather than my face on the computer screen. I often remind both myself and many of my minister friends, especially within the Christian tradition, but really within all religious traditions, that the 4th of July is not a religious holiday. even if it happens to fall on a Sunday. Given that that's the case, I'm still going to reflect a little bit on some thoughts and ideas that are connected with this day, specifically looking at the words that we find in the Declaration of Independence that say in the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. I'm going to be focusing on the vision of all persons are created equal. And I've been reflecting on what if we actually acted as if this were the case? What if we actually acted in society as if all persons were created equal? And it seems to me that this is at least potentially the hope for our republic, to live into this vision expressed by these words, although not expressed in the way that it should have been expressed in our Declaration of Independence. It's important to note when we look at the Declaration of Independence the significant influence of a certain philosopher on the Declaration. A philosopher that had a tremendous amount of influence on Thomas Jefferson, who is the person we know who wrote most of the words in the Declaration of Independence with the help of a number of persons. It's important to note the significant influence of John Locke on the words of Thomas Jefferson used in the Declaration of Independence, because Jefferson's discussion of the laws of nature that he talks about in the Declaration, natural rights, and the usurpation of power and tyranny that Jefferson uses to describe the actions of the King of Great Britain, that he ascribes to the King of England, these are all thoroughly Lockean language. This is all thoroughly Lockean in content. The language of the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is grounded in Locke's thought. Locke's thought about the natural rights of men, and more specifically, the natural rights of white men. The Lockean, Jeffersonian notion that, quote, all men are created equal, meant all white men were created equal, while women, people of color, and indigenous people were not included. This influence of John Locke on the Declaration of Independence is a well-known fact. It's also one of the reasons that Locke is often given the title the philosopher king of America. You may know a little bit about Plato's philosophy, and Plato talked about the importance of a philosopher being the ruler of a society because of the philosopher's love of wisdom and understanding of the good and justice. Well, many persons see Locke as being that kind of intellectual thought leader in relation to the founding of the United States, even though he was not from the United States. He was from Great Britain. But his thought was very influential on Jefferson and some of the other founders. What's less known about Locke's influence on Jefferson's words in the Declaration of Independence is that Locke's influence, I believe, was part of what brought about the codification of the racist justification for genocide of indigenous people into the founding document, one of the key founding documents, the Declaration of Independence of the United States. For Locke, central to the pursuit of happiness is the pursuit of property. In fact, if you read Locke, he talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Jefferson, I think, wisely decided to focus on happiness as a broader, more general term of pursuit for human beings. But for Locke, central to the pursuit of happiness was the pursuit of property. And Locke believed that property is acquired by men mixing their labor with nature. They would mix their labor with nature, mix their labor with the wilderness, and thereby infuse value into nature through their labor. Nature without labor was valueless. Wilderness without being mixed with labor, for Locke, did not have value. It only had value when men mixed their labor with it and infused value into it. And the increase in value that came from labor gives the person, the man, who mixes his labor with nature the right of ownership or property rights. This was something that Locke only talked about in relation to men, therefore the continued use of the exclusive language. The bit of nature with which their labor has been mixed is now theirs because of the value that they have brought to it with their work, with their labor. Now, this notion of property might seem harmless enough at first glance, but the pernicious part of this concept becomes painfully apparent when we see Locke justify the taking away of land from indigenous people on the premise that the indigenous people are wasting the land by not properly mixing their labor with nature. Since Locke judges that the indigenous people are not mixing their labor with the land, he concludes that the land is therefore not their property and can justifiably be taken from them because it's not theirs in the first place. This view of indigenous people actually makes its way into the Declaration of Independence in two of the many grievances expressed in relation to the King of Britain. And here are the two grievances in which this view of indigenous people find their way. One is, he has, and he here is the King of Great Britain, he has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. I just wanted to sink in just for a moment here that the founders were upset with the King of Great Britain because the King of Great Britain was not allowing enough immigration into the colonies, as opposed to so many persons today arguing that we allow too much immigration to occur. But remember that grievance. The second grievance, he, the King of Great Britain, has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers. This is a quote from the Declaration of Independence. Has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. End quote. So two things become very apparent here. First, the Declaration of Independence expresses displeasure with the conditions being placed by Great Britain on the colonies concerning the taking away of more land from indigenous persons. That was one of the complaints in the Declaration of Independence, is that Great Britain was not allowing us to take away more land from indigenous persons without so many conditions being placed upon the colonies. And then second, the Declaration clearly does not include indigenous people as being created equal to white men. These are two things that are codified in one of the key founding documents of our republic. The great tragedy of this is that the United States would prove to be much more ruthless and genocidal in its relation to indigenous people than even Great Britain was. I'm not glorifying Great Britain here. Great Britain was not good in relation to indigenous people, but the United States was even worse, and arguably much worse. The successful violent revolution against Great Britain by the United States removed what few constraints there were against the implementation of an all-out genocide of indigenous persons. And when these constraints were removed, the United States did not delay in its murderous expansion westward. Through the literal hunting of indigenous persons by murderers for hire. The literal hunting of indigenous persons by murderers for hire, some of whom hunted for animals one day and then hunted persons the next. And this activity was often glorified by other settlers on the frontier. I know this personally because my great-great-great-grandfather wrote about one of these murderers for hire in a way that was something that was just accepted. It's just something that was expected of these mercenaries, basically, who were hired by the government to kill indigenous people to make room for westward expansion. So you had the literal hunting of indigenous persons, you had forced removals, you had broken treaties, and cultural genocide. And when you take this fact together with the fact that Great Britain ended its practice of enslaving persons in 1834, that's when Great Britain and all of its colonies throughout the world, and in Great Britain itself, it had actually ended that practice a bit sooner, but in all of its colonies in 1834, the practice of enslaving persons was ended as compared to 1865 in the United States. When you take those two facts together, the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War that followed perpetuated the slavery of millions of persons of color for decades longer than likely would have been the case under Great Britain. And it greatly accelerated the genocide of indigenous persons. So from the point of view of human rights for persons of color and indigenous people, the events that followed the signing of the Declaration of Independence led to some of the most evil actions in the history of humankind and are not worthy of celebration, but rather call for a declaration of repentance as opposed to a declaration of independence. The good news is that some form of redemption is always possible after repentance, but it is only possible after repentance. It's only possible after we turn away from the systems of injustice, the systems of racism that have plagued us for so long. We need to remember that the seeds of tyranny, the seeds of injustice, find fertile soil in uncritical patriotism. But the seeds of freedom, the seeds of true freedom, find fertile soil in truth and reconciliation. But we can only find reconciliation, we can only find true justice by finally facing the truth. At this time, we're going to have our time of giving. And those of you who wish may, for the first time in a very long time, bring your gifts to the table. Or, thanks to the wonderful modern technology that we have, you can still give through the church mobile app as well.
Our parting thought today is by Leslie Fales. She calls her thoughts all that we have been, all that we will become. All that we have been separately and all that we will become together is stretched out before and behind us, like stars scattered across a canvas of sky. We stand at the precipice, arms locked together like tandem skydivers working up the courage to jump. Tell me, friends, what have we got to lose? Our fear of failure? Our mistrust of our own talents? What have we got to lose? A poverty of the spirit? The lie that we are alone? What wonders await us in the space between the first leap and the moment our feet, our wheels, however we move our bodies across this precious earth, touch down softly on unknown soil? What have we got to lose that we can't replace with some previously unimaginable joy? Blessed are you, Spirit of life, who has sustained us, enlivened us, and enabled us to reach this moment. Give us courage in our leaping and gratitude in our landing, and share with us in the joy of a long and fruitful ministry together.
Hear these words from Maya Angelou in her poem Still I Rise for our benediction. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Let us stand together for the extinguishing of the chalice and say these words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.